February 1967. Daytona International Speedway. The factory teams from Ford and Chrysler have spent millions preparing for the biggest race of the year. Then, a black and gold Chevelle rolls onto the track. No sponsor decals, no corporate backing, just a number 13 on the door and a crew chief named Smokey Yunick standing behind the pit wall with a cigar clenched between his teeth. When Curtis Turner fires the engine and puts that car on the pole at 180.831 miles per hour, faster than anyone has ever qualified at Daytona, the NASCAR officials have no idea what they are looking at. They would not understand for years. The pit lane erupted. Ford and Chrysler engineers who had spent millions stood frozen, staring at timing sheets that made no sense. An unsponsored Chevelle had just beaten them all. The man responsible was not supposed to be there. Henry Yunick was the son of Ukrainian immigrants, raised on a Pennsylvania farm where he learned to build machines from whatever he could find. When his father died, 16-year-old Smokey dropped out of school and built a working tractor from a junked car. He flew 50 bombing missions over Europe in a B-17 he named Smokey and his firemen. After the war, he saw Daytona Beach from the air and decided to stay. He opened a garage, the best damn garage in town. By 1962, his Pontiacs had won the Daytona 500 twice, with Fireball Roberts behind the wheel. He was twice named NASCAR Mechanic of the Year. Everyone knew Smokey understood engines better than anyone alive. But this Chevelle was not fast because of its engine. NASCAR officials circled the black and gold machine, measuring, inspecting, finding nothing obviously wrong. The car looked stock. It was not. Smokey understood something about speed that no one else in NASCAR had figured out yet. In 1967, stock car racing meant exactly that. You raced what the factory built. The rulebook was thin, written by men who understood pistons and camshafts, but had never considered what happened when a car pushed through air at 180 miles per hour. The assumption was simple. Speed came from horsepower. Build a bigger engine. Win more races. Smokey Yunick understood something different. At those velocities, air becomes a wall. Every unnecessary curve, every gap between body panels, every chrome strip protruding a fraction of an inch costs speed. Reduce the resistance, and a smaller engine beats a bigger one. This was not theory. This was physics. And nobody in NASCAR was paying attention to physics. The Chevelle that sat on the Daytona pole was not one car. It was the second of three machines Smokey built between 1966 and 1968, each more radical than the last. This particular car had been constructed at Chevrolet Engineering in Michigan, then shipped to Smokey's garage in Daytona Beach, where he and a team of Chevy technicians finished it in secret. What they created looked like a stock Chevelle. It was not. Smokey sectioned the roof, lowering it just enough to reduce frontal area without triggering suspicion. He raised the floor, dropping the entire body closer to the ground. The body itself was shifted backward on the chassis by nearly 3 inches, improving weight distribution and moving the aerodynamic center of pressure toward the rear. The front bumper was sectioned and deepened by 2 inches, tucked tight against the bodywork. This created an AR dam years before NASCAR allowed front spoilers. Every window sat flush with the surrounding metal. Every gap was sealed. Even the drip rails along the roof were moved closer to the body. Individually, each modification was minor. Combined, they transformed the car into something that sliced through air instead of fighting it. But the body was only half the equation. The engine displacing those cylinders was not the 427 cubic inches everyone assumed. Smokey had shortened the stroke, reducing displacement to 408 cubic inches. A smaller engine in a race where size meant power seemed insane. It was not. The shorter stroke allowed higher RPMs, which meant more power on Daytona's long backstretch, where the car spent most of its time at full throttle. Smokey was trading torque for speed exactly where speed mattered most. Then there was the fuel system. NASCAR rules specified a maximum fuel tank capacity. Fair enough, but the rules said nothing about fuel lines. Smokey coiled 11 feet of 2-inch diameter tubing beneath the car, running from the tank to the engine. 11 feet of tubing that wide holds approximately 5 gallons. 5 gallons of fuel that existed outside the regulated tank. 5 gallons that meant fewer pit stops, while every competitor burned time on pit road. The frame was perhaps the most audacious modification. NASCAR allowed teams to swap frames between manufacturers for safety purposes. Smokey interpreted this as permission to manufacture his own frame entirely. He used the engine block itself as a stressed chassis member, stiffening the entire car while reducing weight. He offset the frame to the left, positioned the driver to the left, shifted the fuel cell to the left. On Daytona's banked turns, that weight bias planted the car harder into the pavement than any conventionally balanced machine could achieve. Curtis Turner put the Chevelle on the pole. In the race, he led laps before the engine failed on lap 143. The car went to Atlanta for the next superspeedway event. Turner won the pole again. During practice, something broke in turn 4. The Chevelle barrel rolled 6 times down the front stretch, sailed over the pit wall, and came to rest as twisted wreckage. Turner climbed out without a scratch. Smokey's roll cage had saved his life. He crushed the remains into a 4-foot cube and kept it outside his garage for 28 years. But there was a third Chevelle, and when Smokey brought it to Daytona in 1968, NASCAR would finally understand what they were dealing with. The third Chevelle arrived at Daytona in February 1968. NASCAR officials descended on it immediately. They inspected for hours. They found 9 violations and told Smokey the car could not race until everyone was corrected. Smokey looked at the list, looked at his car sitting there without its fuel tank, which inspectors had removed and set on the garage floor. "Better make it 10, he said. Then he climbed in, started the engine, and drove away. The car ran fine without its tank. 5 gallons lived in the fuel lines alone. NASCAR responded the only way they could. They created the template system, metal cutouts representing the exact profile of production hoods, roofs, and trunk lids. Every race car now had to match those templates precisely. The system exists today because of one car built in a Florida garage. Smokey later claimed that roughly half of NASCAR's 1970s rulebook consisted of regulations written specifically because of modifications he had pioneered. He was not bragging, he was stating fact. The man who understood aerodynamics before NASCAR knew the word mattered had forced an entire sport to rewrite its rules. He did not cheat. He revealed what the engineers had failed to see. Smokey Yunick ran that garage in Daytona Beach for 40 years. He built engines for champions, designed safety features that saved lives, and forced an entire sport to write better rules. When he died in 2001, they auctioned off his tools, his engines, his secrets. He did not want a museum. He wanted his work to keep working. The template system NASCAR uses today exists because one man in a Florida garage understood physics better than their engineers. He never apologized for it. If you find this story as remarkable as I do, subscribing ensures you will not miss the next one.